Welcome back to another amazing conversation. I am so excited to be joined with Christine Renee today as she is here to share her top takeaways from her recent pilgrimage to the birthplace of Reiki in Japan. Christine, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm really excited to be home and really excited for this conversation. A lot of things shifted from my first trip to Japan to my second trip to Japan, and I'm blessed and honored to have those experiences and share them with you guys.
Beautiful. So we're switching roles a little bit here today. I'm going to play interviewer for Christine as she shares all of her amazing insight and experiences. So, Christine, I'd love to just start with for those who may not know what you were doing in Japan, why you went. Can you give us a little bit of background on what this trip was intended to be?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great starting question. So basically, this was a Reiki pilgrimage. The intention behind it was to travel to Japan, to Kyoto, for a pilgrimage to the birthplace of Reiki. And on top of that, I was bringing along family with me. So that added like a whole other layer because the first time I went, my dad came with me. And now, this 2 years later, my mom and my aunt, my dad's sister, joined us as well. And so I was hanging out with my parents and my aunt on this spiritual pilgrimage. And even in those people, like the background of their Reiki wisdom was diverse. Like my mom has been around Reiki for over 40 years. But my dad and my aunt are Reiki masters, right? And so it was very interesting to see how well they meshed with the rest of the pilgrimage itself. And because we wanted to land in Japan and really feel settled and in the time zone beforehand, we left early enough to go to Nara, Japan beforehand. And then on the end, I really wanted time for integration. And we went to Okinawa, which is a tropical island south of Japan, which is it is Japan. Technically, it is Japan, but it has a very, very, very different feel there. And so it was this beautiful contrast that came up between mainland Japan and Okinawa that really set that integration into place for me and really understood everything that I experienced in Japan. But the original intention was, yes, this is a Reiki pilgrimage. This is a spiritual pilgrimage. And to be able to experience that with my family.
Beautiful. So, a little family reunion happening in Japan.
Right. Well, and I see like, it feels like I see my parents quite a bit, at least this year. Like I saw them at Christmas time. We spent spring break together. So it hasn't been a long time, but it has been a while for me to be with my aunt. And it really is my dad and my aunt's line, like my bloodline to clairvoyance, to psychic abilities, all of those things. It's in my father's line of family. That's why we're so interested in shamanism and spirituality and Reiki. Like a lot of us on that line of the family are. I'm the one in the family that made it into a business, right? And so I'm still like the go-to in the family. If shit hits the fan, like I'm the first to call. And they're also in their own right very talented, and it's in our blood. It's like I can't explain it to it. It's there.
And I know that that was something that you had talked about leading up to, especially this pilgrimage, is just that calling that you had to go and experience the things and learn more and take this lens of the history as we now know it and the roots of Reiki and the shamanic connections and really experience that further. So how did that go this time around in your pilgrimage?
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I think there is a dynamic in this where I have to kind of put a little background in. Like the first trip that I went to Japan, which was 2 years ago, same exact Reiki pilgrimage. This pilgrimage had more spiritual masters that we sat with, more people who were head priests, more people that were zazen masters, right? Like there was more experiences like that versus the first trip felt more like a tour and a sitting with all these cool places. And the first trip, I was living a life where I was married and I was very much a business boss mom and was very much in a masculine energy, and really already going into that trip having some marriage difficulties. And when I landed in Japan the first time, it was like, oh my God, I can relax. I can let my dad lead and figure out the details for me and make sure I'm safe and make sure I'm getting from place one to place two. Like, we were a really good dynamic duo on that first trip. And this trip, it was very interesting. It was very different in the fact that I had two additional women with me there. Now everyone is, my dad is 69, my mom is 70, my aunt was turning 75 on the trip. And I kind of became the lead, right? So this trip, here I am a single mom. I've been doing this for a long, like the spiritual work for a long time. And on top of that, like I have been able to, in the last 2 really settle into my femininity, into my let things flow, allowing to not really have to be so, I don't know, determined and structured and really masculine. And so it was interesting. Like, I feel like a different person going into this trip this year, right? And so this time I had to become the lead oftentimes, you know? And so for my little mini group, I was helping with directions. I was making sure I felt so much more comfortable landing in the country, which was different in itself. Like the first time, I hadn't done any international travel in like 20 years. I have done so much international travel in the last 2 years. I was like, I literally, the first day we got to Kyoto, we could not decide on a restaurant because we all have different dietary needs. And so I dropped them off at a restaurant and was like, see ya, I'm out. And I left and I went to the fish market, right? Like, I would have never done that on the first trip. So I felt so much like a different person to begin with, much more confident and comfortable, and also becoming kind of this person who was the glue to our group and kind of became the lead on like helping with directions and where are we going, what are we doing, and so that element was really different, really contrast. Okay, now I feel like I need to have you ask the question again.
No, that was beautiful. Let's follow that because I know that that energy is such a prominent takeaway. We've talked about it a little bit on
Yes.
our own of what you were bringing back, but I'm curious how I know that a lot of our listeners who have maybe followed your journey for a really long time will remember that last time you went to Japan, you came back and your entire life just kind of shifted and you had so many aha moments and releasing and calling in new things. And do you feel like this pilgrimage has been as transformative in that way?
Not in the same way at all, right? I literally came back from that first Japan pilgrimage and my eyes were profoundly opened and changed. And just being able to feel into my feminine energy on that trip and not having to direct every single piece of it, it was contrast with my home life, right? I came home and I was divorced within 2 months. I had bought a home within 4 months and like became a single mom, like needed to rebuild my life from the ground up when I came home last time. And radical, like radical, radical. And I think the intention this time was that I was hoping to go deeper into the practice and not, because I was already there, like I'm already spiritually solid, right? Like that's what I felt like. And I was like, okay, I want to go and go deeper into the meditation, deeper into the practices, while knowing that I have my family with me. And if anyone knows what it's like to travel with family, especially your mother, especially your father, right? Like you are opening yourself up to being triggered, right? Because family members are the one that's going to be able to do it. Like, right. So my real goal and intention was, yes, I wanted to go deeper, but I also wanted to, I knew that things could come up from family and I didn't want to waver. I didn't want to waver in my practice. I wanted to know that I could maintain true to that spiritual alignment without wavering with the family dynamics. Right. And so I mean, I get along well with everyone in my family, but we all know, like if anyone's going to undermine our spiritual alignment, it's going to be a family member. So, that was kind of like an underlying intention. And this time going, I wouldn't necessarily say I went deeper into the practice. Like I had some really beautiful moments of, wow, I'm in that deep meditative state that I was hoping for. And at the same time, going on the same pilgrimage twice, um, we still had a lot of newbies in the group. Like this was a very cultural pilgrimage as well. And I already had the background. So a lot of the questions that were being asked in the beginning of the pilgrimage were things I already knew. I knew from the first trip. I knew from reading Justin Stein's book. I already knew a lot of the context, but the context wasn't known by everyone. And so a lot of the time, the beginning of the pilgrimage, it's asking and answering those basic questions. So why don't Buddhists worship Buddha? Like, like what felt like to me, like these are really preliminary questions when being asked to the Zazen master that we're supposed to be meditating with, but instead of meditating, we're actually doing this basic Q&A, right? And so there was that little bit of like, I understand what's going on in this moment. And I really wish that we were able to meditate longer than 5 minutes, right? Like in the beginning of the trip. So there were definitely pieces where I I could have been guided deeper or going deeper, but it wasn't the group collective's readiness to do that until later in the trip. Right. And so going up the mountain. So on the pilgrimage, we go up to Mount Kurama 3 times. We go to Deep Kurama once, and we go to Mount Hiei once. And all of these places are important for the context of Reiki. And I love going to Mount Hiei every time. Like that is such a profound place for me to understand. Like it is the wheel, and all of the spokes is everything else. So Mount Hiei is a spoke to Mount Kurama. It is the birthplace of Japanese Buddhism. It is the birthplace of Zen meditation. It is the birthplace of really, like, it is the heart and soul of spirituality in Japan, right? So understanding Mount Hiei makes sense for everything else. And going into the temples there is always such a transformative experience. I'm like, how do I explain it? Like, here I am, like we're sitting with one of the head priests on this mountain, and he's giving us a tour. Like we start in one location where he's lecturing, we're meditating, he's praying, like we're doing the things, and then we move into another temple, and I am completely outside of my body, floating around. And so he then is now lecturing in another temple where there's all these tourists around, and I'm just feeling the pillar in this temple. And I love this. And if you look at a picture, like it can't even show you, because on the outside, the temple is encompassed in like a metal building because it's under reconstruction. So there's nothing beautiful to look like. It is a tin box on the outside because of the outwardly construction on it. And it's taking years and years and years. And on the inside, you feel that it is ancient. It is like the oldest temple in Japan. That's the feeling of it. So you feel this pillar, and you can feel the energy of hundreds of years. Not only does the pillar itself is made of a tree trunk that is hundreds of years old, maybe 600-700 years old is this tree trunk. And they are the pillars of the building. So you have multiple of these, and holding up a spiritual temple. So when I tune into this building, and I think I talked about this first time, like this temple, it's like I have the remembrance of everything that came before it. This is the temple that lit the candle that they have kept burning for like 800 years. Like I can feel the attendance, and being there amongst the tourists, amongst this head monk, teacher, spiritual master who's like lecturing. I am just, I want to, like, the first word that comes to like zoned out, but I'm not zoned out. I'm zoned in. Like I am in it so much that I'm not paying attention to the lecture. I am feeling the energy of the building. I'm feeling the energy of this place. I'm having remembrances of what happened in this building in the years past. So like there'll be pieces of his lecture and I'm like, oh, I remember that. Like I can see that through the building. I'm letting my clairvoyance show up and going, yeah, I can hear the story and it's not landing on me in a logical, intellectual way. It's landing in me on a spiritual way and I can see it. My clairvoyance is showing up so that I can see the pictures in my mind's eye of what happened in the history of this building, right? I remember going to the same building on the first trip and hugging the pillar and just feeling the same blissed outness, right? So there was pieces like that throughout the trip where it was like, it didn't really matter what he was saying. And so like, here's my aunt afterwards go, hey, Christine, I couldn't hear them very well, right? Like, here's these, I kept calling old people. I'm like, gotta let the old people start walking. Like they're slower. Like I was kind of always herding them around, but it was kind of that like, she was hoping that I was listening so that I could relay it to her because she couldn't hear it as well, like physically hear it as well. I'm like, and I just looked at him like, I was not energetically like in the conversation, but I'm sure it hit my subconscious. Like I know everything that he said hit my subconscious. So if you would ask me a question, I could answer it. That's what it felt like often, where I was there in this energetic spiritual experience, and yet I wasn't necessarily taking away notes. Like there was definitely times where we would be in lectures and I would be taking notes, like having my journal is definitely filled with notes. And there was times that it was appropriate to let that go and just feel the energy of the place.
Yeah, and that mix of receiving the information from a person versus receiving the information from the energy is, I mean, we teach that to our students, right? Knowing when to let your intuition lead versus when to let your mind lead. And I'm curious because that relationship between that kind of more giving masculine energy and that more receptive feminine energy is a really big theme for you in this trip. Tell me more.
Yeah, like I feel like it was interesting, and because this trip did have a lot of spiritual masters that were teaching us. We had a head priest on Mount Kurama who is a Shugendo master teacher, and like is the only way I can really place it. Like oftentimes if you would ask these spiritual masters like what their title was, they wouldn't necessarily know how to respond to me. I'm like, are you a like a Shinto priest? Are you a Buddhist monk? Like what are you? And they would have difficult times like interpreting what that means. They would be like, I'm a monk of this place, right? Like they didn't have titles, but these were the masters of the masters of the masters on wherever we were at, like is who we were talking to. And oftentimes what I recognized and what I noticed is that they were all men. And being in their energy was profound and amazing. Like the actual prayers and the actual acts that they were performing, the chants, everything that they were doing was powerful. It was palpable. You could feel the energy in the room. Like things would be lifting off of you and falling away. Like you could feel it. And yet, at the same time, they were all men. I never saw a woman, right? And so it wasn't even until Deep Karama where we went for a blessing at Deep Kurama is the backside of Mount Kurama. And it's really pretty difficult to get to. And the first time I went to Japan, it was they had rebuilt the temple there, and there's suture mounds and there's a gravial site that's like over 1,000 years old. Like it's a profound location. And they had just rebuilt the temple and we had gone to like bless the temple. And this time we went and we had this beautiful world-renowned musician with us who's also very involved as a Shinto practitioner and a monk. And he went to the World Convention of Wisdom Keepers. And, like he was amazing. And yet the only thing I could think of was his wife. His wife was the only person on the whole tour. I think her name was Julie, like who was clearly spiritual teacher and in her nature, but she sat lower than the men. Like, I just wanted to be like, can we give her a chair? Like, she clearly knows as much as everyone else up here. Can we give this woman a chair? Because her voice is important. And so I had all these beautiful experiences. And yet, when the question was asked, where are the women? Why aren't the women able to run around Mount Hiei as a Yamabushi practitioner? The answer is that a woman's job is in the kitchen. And the woman's job in the kitchen is to make the food to support the men. And that answer really kind of clicked for me this time. Like, I was so in my own transformational process, the first pilgrimage I went to Japan, that these are the types of things that really started to stand out to me. Where are the women? Where are the women's voices in this? Why aren't they here? And while it was very interesting, because I've had this book called A Chariot to Freedom on my bookshelf for over a year, and it is an intense Buddhist scriptures book. Like, it's not something you pick up for light reading. It is one of those books that you are invested once you start reading it, and it is deep and heavy and very much written by some enlightened monk. Like, that's what it feels like, right? And the morning I left before my trip, I pulled the book off my shelf and I looked at the title and recognized that there's something that I need to read in this, and I need to read it now. And it's huge. It's like 800 pages. It is a big, fat, hard-covered, heavy book. And here I am ready to leave for my trip going, I think I need to bring this book with me, and it's heavy, right? Like, no one wants to carry a heavy book in their carry-on backpack, right? Like, it's a heavy book. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring this book and I'm going to read it. And because when else am I going to have an opportunity as a single mom, as a spiritual entrepreneur? When am I going to have a time to read this book? And so I bring it with me, and I'm starting to read it on the airplane over. And when I have chances, I read it in the evenings. And these are scriptures from, 100, 200, 300 years ago that makes up a lot of the practices. Like, it's the foundation. This book is a foundation of beliefs. And what I'm seeing in practice is the practice, right? Like, the book isn't talking about the practices. It's talking about the underlying foundational beliefs. And when I started reading the book and recognizing that the foundation of Buddhism is very patriarchal and very hierarchical, and basically saying if you are born as a man and you are born with the availability of Buddhist knowledge, like if the teachings are available to you, are blessed, and you should take the opportunity to study the quote unquote Dharma, right? The Buddhist scriptures. And that is, and so like the first 100 pages is about basically how if you are born this way, you should take this opportunity. And yet the underlying, like, you could have been born an insect, you could have been born an animal, and we are so lucky to have a human body that if you have the opportunity, you should drop everything to study the scriptures. And the underlying tone is like, if you are born as a woman, you're less likely to have available to you to walk the path in the Buddhist scriptures, because you have innate attachment, because you have children and you have a home, and those are attachments. And women and men can just walk away from those attachments. And so right there, I was like, whoa. Well, hold up now. Men can just walk away from their wife and children because they're a man and they have this availability to study the scriptures. So, like, having that underlying tone about the practices that I was seeing really started to kind of contextualize some of the deeper understandings of what I was going through, and why I was starting to get so having this underlying dissonance. Like I couldn't put my finger on it. I remember the first time we went up to Mount Kurama, we started the journey by with a lecture from Bruce. And Bruce is amazing. Like if you want to learn traditional Japanese Reiki, like I highly recommend him. Um, the and he knows it so much from a masculine point of view. And he used to be a part of Reiki Cafe University. And you could tell even back then, like he held so well in his masculine. I was so in my feminine when we would come together. And so we have this very contrast. And I love that he is a wealth of knowledge and that he has sat in these practices. He's done the work, if you will. And it's also a lot of things that he was saying was like, the goal is Satori. Like it shouldn't be a goal, but that the idea is if we do this practice, we will reach this Satori state. And how can we let go of attachments? How can we let go of our senses, et cetera, so that we can reach Satori? And I'm at this point very comfortable in saying that is not my goal. Like, who cares? I've been there, done that. That is not why I'm here on earth. I am okay and comfortable with and excited for my cyclical existence in the world. Like I have chosen to come back again and again as a woman in this human suit to do work of service to others. This is who I am. I know who I am and I'm comfortable with it. It is not to reach Satori. I'm not trying to escape anything. I'm comfortable with the ups and downs in life. It is part of being a human and being able to experience all the highs and lows gives us that beautiful contrast that makes us human. So I'm not trying to escape that. And so when it comes to that piece of we just didn't have the same idea or the same goal, because it's very clear that that's really important to Bruce and it's not important to me. And I'm very comfortable with speaking up and saying, this is who I am. And so so I did say it, like, I'm not going to reevaluate my life purpose. like I don't need to. I know why I'm here and what I do. And so it was and that kind of helped me from the very beginning and set the tone of like, I'm not compromising who I am on this trip. I'm here to observe. I'm here to deepen my own spiritual practice and really ultimately deepen my own spiritual truth. And that's really what set me up for what was next.
So as that continued to deepen in you and you were having these awareness of, where are the women and the stories that shaped the development of Buddhism and therefore Reiki and all of these practices that did have this very masculine structured energy, how did that awareness continue to evolve as you continued on the pilgrimage?
So we leave the lecture that Bruce gave and we go up to Mount Kurama. And I love going up there. I do. There are so many freaking stairs. Like you're going to get a stair master workout. I think we clocked in 45 sets of stairs according to my phone, right? Like it's a hike. And I really kept coming back to one particular spot on the mountain. And so you get off the train, you walk the mountain, you can take a tram up, that will take you up a little while. And then you get to the main temple square. And that main temple square has this beautiful mandala where you can stand in the vortex, you can feel the energy. And yes, that's all amazing. And then you can walk farther up the mountain. And if you go up farther up the mountain, there at basically the peak of the mountain, there is all of those roots that you see in Reiki pictures. Like the trees there are profound. And on the top, there is a space where there is a large tree that has fallen. That was a kami tree. You can see the rope around it. And if you see a large, thick rope around trees, you know that there's kami spirit there, meaning in the Shinto religion, it is believed that this tree is an embodiment of a spirit. And kami can be embodied in buildings, they can be embodied by rivers, they can be embodied by trees, they can be embodied in specific locations. And that identifying factor of that rope around the tree means that this is one of them, right? And so there's numerous of these on the mountain. Like I remember 3 at the base of the mountain, and there's this one at the top. Well, here we have this fallen kami tree, and next to it is this wellspring. Both are anomalies. We're at the top of the mountain. There should not be a freshwater spring at the top of a mountain. So it literally is this water source that is coming up from the earth and flowing consistently, a constant flow. And then 10 feet from it is this fallen tree, this fallen kami tree, and this is called Asui Gongen. And it was told that this is where Asui has reached his enlightenment. Like that is the myth, that is the legend, that is the story. This is where it happened. He was sitting at the tree. Well, in 2019, that tree was taken out by a typhoon, and the typhoon was beelined straight for this tree. There's nothing else on this mountain that was taken out, like literally one direct line towards this tree, and that is it. Like 10 feet away from this tree, the trees are standing tall and strong. Why this tree? Now, this tree is hundreds of years old, and Reiki has been around for a little longer than 100 years, right? And so this spot was a sacred spot for many, 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 many people. And it was a sacred holy site for people to meditate at. It wasn't just a sui. So having this recognition that didn't land on my first trip, I was having too much of an emotional experience the first time to really understand the history of going, one, this tree has been around forever. Asui wasn't the only one here. That Asui and Reiki are not known. Like on the last trip up to Mount Kurama, the head priest of Mount Kurama gave us a guided tour, and he's like, all I know is this is where it happened. But so has it been for many. Many people have sat here and reached their quote unquote enlightenment, right? And that now the tree is down. And from some perspectives, there's this idea of wanting to rebuild the temple there. So here's this big ass tree and this temple, and the tree fell on top of the temple. And so this was like the spiritual location that's been wiped out by this typhoon in 2019. And then just across from it is this spring. And so the idea is that this tree is the divine masculine energy of the mountain, and the fountain is the divine feminine on the mountain. And there are some voices that are saying we need to rebuild the temple, and we need to figure out how we're going to restore this area. And from a shamanic perspective, I just couldn't get on board with that. I'm like, if there was a supernatural event that took out this tree, this divine masculine energy that is supposed to be symbolizing for this mountain, and it's gone now, it has fallen. It not only took out the tree, it took out the temple as well. And across from it is a wellspring that is supposed to be representing the divine feminine, and it stayed constant, no change. It is ever flowing. From a shamanic perspective, I can't get on board with this idea that we need to restore the divine masculine energy. There's a reason I couldn't get over. There's a reason it is like this. And that maybe, just maybe, it's significant for Reiki, and maybe it's not. Like there's a part of it's like Reiki has only been around for a little over 100 years. This tree, this spot has been here for a very, very long time, hundreds of years, right? So there's this emphasis that, Reiki practitioners have projected onto this space, that this is the place that Reiki was birthed. and the tree has fallen and the wellspring is still available. So if the wellspring is still available and it is the divine feminine and it is constant flow, and what happened right after 2019, right after this typhoon? COVID hit, things shut down, and the Reiki world changed. And in my perspective, it changed for the better. People woke up to Reiki and were able to take Reiki online. That people were coming to recognize that Reiki needed to change and shift with the times. That it was okay to mix modalities, that it was okay to allow their intuition to open, to trust their inner knowingness, this inner wellspring of wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, that is what's actually going on the top of Mount Kurama, where we have the divine masculine needs its own like ego death, and the wellspring needs to be honored. Because guess what? If he was sitting next to the tree, he was sitting next to the well as well. And no one is talking about that. Like there's emphasis on this tree. Well, why aren't we talking about, well, he was sitting next to the well? He was there in the place with both. And you're right. And so there was just such a strong awareness this time that the water is here. The water's always been here. The water has never changed. It's never stopped flowing. It's here. It stayed here. And what if Reiki is now available for the shift into the feminine? And that's not saying that we need to deny masculinity. That's not to say that men are bad. It's saying that within each of us, we have both. And we need to have this recognition that our internal feminine deserves a voice, that our internal feminine deserves to be seen and heard and flowed with. And what does that look like as we approach Reiki? How does Reiki want to flow from us in a way of ease and flow? If we know about the masculine, we know about the feminine. The masculine is the structure. The masculine is the routine. The masculine is this black and white. Here are the borders. And the feminine is the wildness. It's the flow. It's the organic, right? We need more of that. And I think we have been building towards that since 2019, since the tree has fallen, right? And so I just really felt like this has wisdom for the Reiki community beyond we need to rebuild a temple.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful way of being able to look at it, is looking at the energetic patterns. And I think it's a really interesting conversation to have, because I know that there are so many people in our community alone who have gotten so much out of, whether for the positive or for the negative, that idea of masculine versus feminine. It can be this really empowering concept where it helps us to open up to the fact that we have, like you're saying, both. We have the structure and we have the flow. And it can also be this really disempowering concept if it's not seen with that gentleness and that openness and the fluidity of everything that is encapsulated in that. I think because of our culture today, especially here in the West, the idea of gender and things like that, those words can, our mind can kind of latch onto them, you know? And I love that idea of going back to looking at the masculine is the structure. You know, it's not masculine man, it's masculine the structure, the foundation, the solidity. And it's not feminine woman, it's the flow, the trust, the intuition, that wildness to it. And bringing that awareness back that both are present, both are there. And we don't see that a lot in our Reiki practice. You know, we talk about this with our students all the time. Oftentimes, the first thing you learn in your Reiki training, right, is these are the hand positions. This is where your hands go to do X, Y, Z. And that is a really rigid structure. And Chantel and I spoke last week in our conversation about Reiki about how one of the first kind of ignitions or sparks of awareness that happens as you start to step out of that box is that moment where you let your hands intuitively go where they're called to go, leaning into that feminine energy of trusting that internal wellspring of wisdom and intuition and flow. And so I'm curious, as you're noticing all of these patterns, as you're watching this story unfold, how were you bringing that back down the mountain and back into your own personal practice?
Oh, I love that question. Well, it didn't really solidify until I hit Okinawa. Like, and I think that's a really crucial part of the story, because in Japan, there's a lot of, there is a lot of feminine energy because it's an island. There's a lot of water, there's a lot of fish, there's a lot of innate flow, and there's this masculine energy that comes in to try to control it. Like this is where I was seeing the very perfectly manicured trees, right? The perfect manicured Zen gardens, the perfectly manicured meals, right? Like everything had to be perfect, right? And then you go to Okinawa. Okinawa, I didn't see a single temple. I didn't see a single shrine. It is a place where the tropics are wild. And the feminine energy there of it just being a mess and being exalted for it being a mess was there. So I traveled north to, we didn't stay near the city. We traveled north. We were very close to the tip of the mountain. It was half an hour to the top of the mountain car drive away. And there is a space called Asumi Spiritual Hikes. And it was glorious. I had the most profound experience in this forest because, in contrast with mainland Japan, this place was a fucking mess. And I loved it. It was dark and it was eerie and it was wet and it was so primitive and full of life, and everything wanted to grow, right? And there was no manicuring of it. It was twisted and it was ugly and it was beautiful at the same time, right? And so landing there and going up to the spiritual hikes, there was the geoforce forest, and you have all of these strewn limestone rocks. Like it looks like an asteroid hit the earth and it's everywhere. And literally the tectonic plate, this is the tip of it. And you have all of this limestone everywhere. And because it's limestone, it erodes with the water. And so all these rocks have these pockets, these holes, and the holes feel feminine. The holes feel like this, let life grow here. And so the plants were growing out of these holes everywhere. And so there's rocks and there's life. And so it almost felt like here, the rocks are the masculine, but holy shit, the feminine is like, I'm going to grow in anything that you give to me, I will grow out of it. And she just explodes there. Well, the next two hikes in this container of the forest, this Asumi spiritual hikes, is there's the shaman's forest and then there's the spiritual forest. Now, this literally is the name. So like if you're getting caught up on the word shaman, that is the translation directly. And so these are the spaces. The shaman's forest and the spiritual forest are the place where women shamans, not masculine shamans, women shamans and priestesses would go over 100 years ago to this forest to do their rituals, to do their practices, right? And of course they would. Like the femininity is dripping from this place, right? And so it was this contrast that really started to get to me, because I'm still reading this Chariot to Freedom. I'm reading this book and getting more and more mad. It has moved from dissonance to anger, right? I'm reading a chapter on the 8 levels of hell and I'm like, oh my fucking God. Like I'm so done with this book. I'm flipping through. It just keeps going and going and going. And I'm just like, I can't read this book anymore because I know my truth. And it's not going to be found in this book. It's found in this forest. So I didn't go just once. I went twice. The first time I went, we were caught in a full-on downpour, rainstorm, and it was glorious. I was ecstatic. I felt like I was being blessed. I felt like I was being washed clean from the anger, the distance of what I felt in Japan and the elements there that I was receiving, and just wanted to revel in the glorious nature of the mess that this forest was being honored for. And then I went a second time. So I went in the downpour, and then 2 days later, just that, like, I think I cried, I was upset, like there was all these things that were starting to move inside of me, and I needed to go again. I needed to go back. And so we went back the second time, and it was sunny, and it was windy, and it was different. Nature was showing up differently this day. And it was like all of the bugs and critters had come out. The snails, the caterpillars, the lizards, the beetles, the birds, the butterflies, like it was all there. And so and once again, it was this glorious feminine energy that stood out. And even more so, where they have a little museum, and there's this fossilized huge shell. I mean, it's like a foot and a half, maybe 2 feet tall, crystallized shell that the label on it is like worship prayer. Like that's the translation of it. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it's a shell that's been fossilized with a big hole in it that looks like a yoni. Like it looks like, and this came from this mountain here where the priestesses did their rituals. This is the place where the women shaman were known to do their work. And here are these objects of worship. And you could tell oftentimes, like, while you walk through, like, this, like the label on some of the things in the forest were like, this is the pelvis stone. If you have female health issues, sit on the pelvis stone. You know, like there were elements like that throughout where it's like, yeah. There's something really important here going on. And I could feel the history of this space just as much as I could feel the history of the temple on Mount Hiei, right? Like I had a physical remembrance of the place. And it was so beautiful and such an alignment for me. Like I can speak highly of Mount Hiei, and I can talk just as highly as this forest, right? Like it wasn't that one was bad and one is good. It just, I could feel the resonance of this place of going, this is what's in alignment for me. And to come to myself and say, I am okay being a mess. I am okay in all of my emotions and how they're showing up. I'm okay with it being dark and wet and messy, and there's nothing innately broken about me. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to curate it. I don't need to trim it away. I don't need to morph myself into something that I am not so I can match this perfect image of oftentimes what I saw in mainland Japan. I'm okay being the mess. I love it here. I love the mess. I love that it can be masculine and feminine and utilized for growth, and it be just this ever living being. And so that really was like the contrast was really what set everything in.
And so, how is that now that you've had time to kind of come back into your daily life a little bit more, and you've had these really beautiful contrasting experiences of those really curated temples with the masculine energy and the wild nature with the feminine energy, and you're coming back into your daily life with the awareness of both? How is that landing?
I have to say I have a really amazing boyfriend who got to witness this whole thing while it was happening and knew from the beginning that when I told him about Japan early on, he was like, I don't think that's a place I ever want to go. He's more of a feminist than I am. And so when I got to Okinawa and I was falling apart, like I was emotionally falling apart, he was able to hold me in that space of there's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with you. You are beautiful just the way you are. And have that match with my experience and then come home to his open arms and having be with him and be able to integrate with him has just been amazing. It's just been amazing because I I really have recognized that it does take a bit of dissonance. It takes a bit of anger for me to really fully show up. Like that bit of anger really helps me move and show up in the world. Like you can see how my posts have changed. They went from pretty pictures to I'm upset about this, right? Like, and you can feel the energy switch behind it, and people resonate with that because I think women in particular are feeling that too, that they're feeling like, I don't want to have to make myself perfect. I want to be okay that I'm a mess and that life is messy and that's okay. And that women's voices are important in the spiritual world. And how do I want to understand my femininity, not to squash out the masculine, just to honor that internal side of me. And that's resonating for people. Like I feel that. And also having his little push of going, can love and passion also wake you up to express yourself equally with that just as much fire, but coming from a place of love, right? And so we've been able to have some sacred ceremonies since I've been home, like sacred communication ceremonies. Let me emphasize, like we're not doing plant medicine or anything like that, but able to come to a place of, I want to turn inward. I want to turn inward to my heart space because it's all within us, in our heart space. And I think that's really what I'm hoping to reveal in the Reiki Masters teacher training that's coming up is there's these masculine entities, deities on the mountain, and then there's Kanan, and Kanan is the heart space, and she can reside within us. And can we tap into her voice from within? And I felt very disconnected from my internal voice. Like I felt like I had to find her externally, or I needed to go to a practice to find her externally. And yesterday morning, I woke up early because of my jet lag, and I'm like, she's in me. She is inside of me. And this is what you teach, Isabel, on Soul Speak. I'm like, I need to turn inward to find that internal voice. She's not external. How do I reach her? And coming to that, taking off these layers to go there she is. That's her voice. And be able to really allow her to come forward and to give me this support of how she wants to teach, how she wants to move forward, how she wants to love in a more profound way, right? So I feel like that's the integration piece. Like it's in us. It's not this external satori. It's not this external idea of perfection. It's not this external idea of how do I perfect myself or fix myself. It's all within. And I'm that's where I'm at. I want to help everyone turn inward and going, how can this Reiki practice come at it from a feminine flow place? How can we come in at it from trusting ourselves without the rule book, right? Like that's what feels true and authentic to me. And there is a way for me to keep continuing to say yes to Reiki, yes to this lineage that I love the practice, but it's within us. And being able to show up for ourselves in that way, first and foremost, feels like that is the foundation that I want.
And that's such a powerful takeaway. Like you can hear it in your voice, you can hear it in the energy that you're bringing, that depth that I think so many of us, especially women, but just in general in the spiritual community, I think so many individuals feel like they're missing that depth and they're missing that wildness inside of them. And I love that you're bringing that forward. So tell us a little bit about how you've got your free webinar coming up this Thursday, which is going to be incredible, and the replay will be available. And then in June, you've got your Reiki Masters class. So tell us how all of this is going to filter into those and how people can get access.
Yes, I love that. So basically, I'm going to be doing a webinar on Thursday, and that webinar is really going to go through these deities of Mount Kurama, of really, why did Mount Asui choose Mount Kurama? Like, there's a lot of beautiful spaces in Japan. Why there? And what does it mean? What did it mean to him and his culture and his background? And what does it mean for us? especially with this new revelation of Sui Gongen, the kami tree is down, and yet we still have this feminine flow, and really focusing in on the feminine deity of Mount Kurama, because she is alive and well there. So I really want to go over that on Thursday's webinar. And then for the Reiki Masters training starting June 5th, we are going to incorporate some of these elements. So I call it Reiki Fusion. I've been calling it Reiki Fusion for a few years because there's elements of traditional Reiki, of understanding the cultural context in which Reiki was born, and that it is also, how do we bring it into the modern world? How can we utilize Reiki in a modern way that respects its tradition, but also kind of loosens up all of that rigidity that this is the way and the only way to practice. I also want to bring forward some elements of how do we feel that energy regularly. I really want to teach self-attunements, and I really would love to teach in this class, how do we find the flow? Like, and it's both right there. Here's the masculine structure. Like, here's some mudras that have structure. And how do we come into a place of trusting our heart space? How can we come in to trust how do we want to practice? Where do we want to bring our Reiki light forward and bring it into our own personal lives and into the world? And as teachers, how do we want to practice if we let go of some of that structure, the hand positions, the neediness to have that rigidity around the practice?
Beautiful. So the links for those are in the show notes so that you can register both for the upcoming webinar on May 29th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The replay is available as well for that. And as well, Christine's Reiki Fusion Master Teacher Training, which is coming up starting on June 5th. So feel free to check out the link and enroll. There's payment plans and everything you could possibly desire to save your spot in this, because Christine is bringing, as you can tell, so much sacred wisdom and passion and personal experiences into this. And having taken her master training a couple of times now, I can say that it is unlike any other master training you will take. So I highly recommend checking it out.
Oh, thank you so much, Isabel. It's been a pleasure sharing all of this with you. I can't wait to bring more into both the webinar and the Reiki Master Teacher Training class. Reiki Fusion is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it continues to evolve. Every time I go to Japan, every time I listen inward of how does Reiki want to show up in the world and within me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Christine. We are so excited to see how this continues to unfold and how you continue to bring it to Moon Rising. So we would love to hear your top takeaways if you're listening to this over in our Moon Rising Shamanic Mystics Facebook group. And be sure to follow along with Christine's journey to learn how all of this continues to unfold and integrate. But until next time, may you awaken to the whispers of wisdom rising from within.